I'm Barry Court, currently President CEO of Ardea Biosciences. I have been in drug development in the pharmaceutical industry for 30-odd years, including a long stint at Bristol Myers Squibb, and then was head of R&D at Environ Pharmaceuticals here in San Diego. Built the company from really 50 people to over 1,000 in R&D. It's what you now know as the Pfizer research laboratories. Used to be Environ, and we were quite successful at both discovery and development of an HIV protease inhibitor. That was the reason why we were eventually acquired. And it's a great privilege to be here today, and hopefully people will get something out of this talk. Thank you. So what I thought that starting out in this discussion, it would be really setting the stage for what is a very difficult process when it comes to the course I was asked to give is a biotech from startup to success. I wish that was the normal case. In fact, most biotechs, unfortunately, don't become successful. And it's one of the reasons why it has become very difficult to finance these kind of companies. Very few of them achieve an approved NDA, a new drug application, in other words, the marketing approval for a drug. And even those that do get an approved NDA, many of them never become profitable. So if you're an investor and you're looking to see some return on that investment, these are not good findings. And as we all know, drug discovery and development is very risky. It takes a great deal of cash to conduct R&D. Large pharma, most large pharma has budgets of $3 to $5 billion in terms of their R&D budget just for that company. So they're very cash intense. Estimates range widely, but the best ones generally come from Tufts, which studies this area. And their estimate is that bringing a drug to market takes over $1 billion investment. That includes all the failures. So you don't spend $1.3 billion on that molecule, but you've spent that much on all of the other products to get you there. And it could take upwards of 13 years. Again, these are not great statistics when it comes to making an investment. And drug discovery process and moving a program in development is, and when we talk about risky, you're looking at the rate of success. And from what we can tell, and the numbers aren't great, less than 10% of discovery compounds make it to a phase 1 program. And so these are leads, not just the compounds that we screen. And of those compounds that make it to phase 1, the very first stage of human testing, only about 16% ever make it to the market. And if you take a look at by phase, you can see that the attrition rate is very high, going from phase 1 into phase 2. So here's a compound that's in phase 1, so you've tested it in healthy volunteers, and now you're putting it into patients to see if it works. You lose a lot of compounds there. Phase 2 into phase 3, not so many. If you've demonstrated activity, then again, you see very high attrition. In phase 2 to phase 3, you continue to see attrition, and when you add up the losses, you end up with only about 16% of compounds moving all the way through. Again, just a brief background on myself. After leaving large pharma, went to what was a very small research boutique here in San Diego, Environ Pharmaceuticals. We were fortunate enough to discover a molecule, nalfinavir, which eventually became Viracept. Because of the, really a combination of being in the right place at the right time and an FDA that actually wanted to get HIV drugs out there to patients, we were able to take that molecule from the lab bench to marketing approval in just over 3 years, which is essentially an impossibility today. I mean, we had a 2-month review at the agency. That just doesn't happen anymore. It takes a very strong political push on the FDA to move that fast. So it was a remarkable opportunity to really hold the world's record on drug development, which I doubt seriously will ever come close to even being paralleled. We decided to sell that drug ourselves. We launched it, became the largest selling HIV protease inhibitor at the world at that time. Since then, better compounds have come out for HIV. This was one of the first that was used in the so-called HIV cocktail. Grew the company here to a very substantial size and was eventually acquired by Warner Lambert. They were acquired by Pfizer. Ended up running the research laboratories here for Pfizer for a year and a half, and then decided to do other things. Eventually decided to start another company, which we named Ardea Biosciences. Started that at the very end of 2006, and just recently sold the company to AstraZeneca, a large London-based global pharma, for $1.3 billion. And I'll go through the reasons why that company was successful. In order to start a biotech, or any company really, you need financing. So how do you actually cobble together the money to get going? And there's a lot of technology that comes out of UCSD. It's why there's over 100 biotechs here in San Diego. People have great ideas, they have inventions, and they want to profit from those, so they want to start a company. Well, how do you do it? Well, certainly one way is you start with friends and family money, maybe some angel investors. These are people that invest small aliquots of cash on startups to get in early. And then with NIH grants, you can get SBIR grants to help fund early stage preclinical studies. Eventually, if you can get enough data, you go to venture capitalists and bring in now $5 to $10 million that it takes you to do phase 1 and phase 2 in order to demonstrate your drug has some activity, because that's when you generally can find a potential partner. And then that's where there's a liquidity event for the VCs. So they're always looking for how do they get out of a company. Even the second they move into it, they're still thinking, how do I get out? And of course, with a 10x profit, but they're thinking, how do I get out? So that's a very common approach. More difficult now because the VCs are really looking for very well-developed products. They used to put money into startups, hardly ever anymore. And taking a company public used to be a fairly attractive approach. Agaron was a small boutique biotech, years away from any compound, and yet they were able to take it public back in the 80s. Nowadays, things are different era. In order to take a biotech public and an IPO for a biotech, you really have to have well-developed technology that investors can see very clearly has a short route to registration. Without that, the chances of getting value is really slim and none. And so what people resort to are other means. You can do a reverse merger. You take your company, your private company, your little startup, and you basically merge it into a public company that generally doesn't have any good technology. And so it's a win-win for both sides. Now you have access to public markets. So, why do people take companies public? It's two things. One is that's a liquidity event for shareholders. They can now sell their stock on a public market. And then the second thing is you can go out and raise money. You sell more stock. If I need another 100 million to develop a product, I go out and I sell stock to investors and bring in the cash. Much more difficult to do in a private company because those investors want to be able to get out of your stock if they're not happy with how things are going. In a private company, they can't get out. They're stuck. So they like public companies. That many large funds don't invest in anything but public companies. So there's a big benefit to being public from the point of view of raising money, but it's hard to get there. For Ardea, we had a slightly different route, which was we took a biotech that had gone under. Company had closed down because their phase 3 program failed, and the board of directors said, stop burning money, your technology sucks, and save the cash, and they closed the company down. Now it had $48 million in cash, which was not insignificant. That money was going to be returned to shareholders. Instead, we went out and found some interesting technology, brought it into that company, and restarted it, and changed the name to kind of move away from the old company and start something new. And that $48 million then was used to really jumpstart the R&D program. So it was a perfect opportunity to start a company that was kind of immediately funded with enough money to make progress. So from that point of view, it was an ideal opportunity.